Hey everybody, it's design time with James and Kory.
Design time.
All right,
Okay, let's
it's
get
time to
started.
design. Let's do it.
I want to let's design. Before we design, let's talk about what we played.
All right.
Uh, just a couple things this week. I played Child of Light.
Oh yeah,
That's an Xbox 360. It's an XBLA game, right?
yeah. I've heard of this. Yeah, I want to play that. Did you wait?
I played the demo.
Thank you. Okay, good. I was
That's
worried
what
there
I know.
that
That
something had
I actually
happened.
spent money?
Yes. No, you didn't.
No, but I'm going to. I'm about to spend some money. As soon as we're
On,
done tonight, I'm going to
on
go
that game?
spend $4 because no, Fez. Fez is on
Oh,
sale right now for $4. So anybody that does not have Fez and has $4,
yeah,
go buy it. And that includes me. So I'm gonna go buy Fez
yeah.
tonight as soon as we're done.
I
But yeah,
really like Fez a lot.
yeah, I played the demo and I enjoyed it, and I thought, it's probably not going to be all the same. There'll be other things that
Yep.
go on beyond the demo, and so
Yep.
I think I will quite enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I think it's worth
Uh,
$4 for sure.
yeah, absolutely, and it's got some of that. Like we were talking about last week with the oh, I can see something over there. Now how do I get
Yeah.
there, right?
Yep. Yep.
Which I really
And
liked.
in
But you,
general, it's very puzzly. Like more sort of in a more traditional sense in a way, like more puzzly than like Braid, I think, or Portal. I think it's really good.
great,
Yeah. Yeah.
excellent. So I'll be picking that up. So yeah, Child of Light it's gorgeous. It's a really nice to
Yeah.
look at. Um, the whole thing looks like a watercolor painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Wait, and so what style
it,
of game is it?
right. I don't know what help me out here. What's the name
Is
for this? I call it a cave scroller. Do you know what I'm talking about?
kind of
Where so you got to
is it a kind of game that they call a Metroidvania, perhaps? Like that's a different. Those
that
often
could
happen in
be because
caves. But it's a
I
cave
did not
scroller.
have I did not have a Nintendo childhood, so
Okay, I can explain what that
so,
means. But yeah,
but like I know you tried what was that iOS one? Find the Way, I think it was called something like that. But there's like
yeah.
Hero of Many. There's a whole bunch of these.
Okay.
Uh, even well, I've played a bunch of them, but you might even call like what's the one on iOS where you get the sort of fat fuzzy bird looking thing? Damn it, I can't
Is it
remember
like
what
a
it is called.
is it like a Flappy
Yeah,
Bird?
and you're flapping and you bust up and all that. Anyway, so
Oh
you're
yeah, yeah, yeah. Badlands. Is that what you're
yeah, I
talking
think
about?
that's correct. I think
Yeah.
so.
It's Badlands
Anyway,
or Badlands. I don't remember if it's plural or not.
right. So anyway, sort of like that, except that where it's not that's yeah, Badland is correct. I got it right
Hmm.
here. Um, where you're, but if you put that Badland is pretty much linear. It's on a line, right?
Yeah.
So if you go in two dimensions instead of just the one dimension,
Yeah. But right.
uh,
So
then you get what I call a cave scroller. I don't really know what it's
okay.
called.
Metroidvanias are they have it's almost like a light RPG element. Like you'll go find a thing like a power glove that suddenly lets you move rocks or something, and then you'll like be able to move rocks for the rest of the game, right? You'll start finding various powers that will open up new areas. It's like, oh, here's this mysterious looking wall, and oh, now I understand. Now I can climb those kind of walls, and then you like,
Okay,
is it
so
that kind of game or is it
I don't know because the demo is really short.
okay?
But what's kind of strange about it is that the combat is not action oriented. It's JRPG style.
Oh,
So
weird.
essentially menu-based combat system, um, and it has a sort of pseudo skill tree.
Okay.
So both of those two elements kind of turned me off, although I like the way they did
Hmm.
their pseudo skill tree.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I think there.
it,
I should. Let me
it's worth a
say.
try anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I'll look at that. I going back to a previous episode, I will say that I always have about JRPGs. Um, I always sort of have a desire to give them more of a chance than
Mm.
I have, because I feel like there must be some good gameplay. Like I can envision how that menu-based combat system can be a real game, right? Where there are actual interesting decisions in there to make and stuff. And people, the Final Fantasy games are so lauded, and I feel like there's a bit of a hole in my game education, so I kind of want to go back and play a couple of those. And
I think this one might be actually a good one to
okay,
try out.
that's cool.
Yeah, the menu-based combat didn't annoy me as much as it does in most of them. So.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm interested in exploring that. Yeah, that would be a good one. Okay, what else?
That was it for new stuff that I can remember. So.
Cool.
I played a few other iOS games, but they weren't anything to mention.
Yeah. I want to play oh man, I can't even remember now what it's called. It's an iOS game, but it won't run on our crappy old first gen iPads. More and more stuff like that.
I have a story about that too, so when you're done.
It's called I think it's called Monument Valley. It's this very Escher-like. It looks like a puzzle adventure-y kind of game with all these Escher-looking screens, and it got a whole bunch of great reviews. Like everything, I choose not to go read about these things. I am like that, right? I don't want the game spoiled or whatever, so whatever. But yeah, so one day we'll have a chance to try that. So what's your story?
So this gets into it's a little bit of a rant, so I'll keep it short. Tammy, has been playing Marvel Puzzle Quest,
Yep,
right?
Yep. I tried that on first gen iPad, and it's unplayable. Unplayable.
It's actually now unplayable.
Like actually unplayable.
That's the actual story, yes. So she had been, because in Marvel Puzzle Quest, part of their monetization is your heroes get hurt and then they recover in real time, right?
Okay.
So, and of course you can spend whatever the coins are to heal your dudes faster. So what she did was had been playing on 3 devices, right?
Okay.
So her heroes on her iPad would be all beat up.
Like
so
3 different accounts? Or does it even track the same account across
I don't think it
different
tracks
devices?
accounts. I think it might just be based on the device, but
okay.
But she was playing on my iPad on my account. And then just this week there was a forced update.
Oh man.
And it no longer, now the minimum required is iOS 6. So she had been playing on as you know, it's a first gen iPad, which it only is up to 5.11, and so she can no longer play it on this iPad. So this is one of the things that makes me cranky about software as a service.
Yeah. That
they can just change things out from under you.
Yeah.
And you don't have a choice. I mean, this is a forced update because this is one that contacts their servers all the time.
Yep.
So. Anyway, that's the story.
It's awesome. It's an awesome...
A little warning. People watch out.
It's a brave new world that we live in, and
brave, horrid new world.
Yep. That's you know what? I didn't even think you could do. I mean, I'm years behind now on iOS deploying and things. But in the old days, you weren't actually allowed to bump up the requirements of an app. Maybe it's only for paid apps. Maybe it still is this way. Because the idea is, well, if somebody has bought this app, you can't just make it not work on their device anymore. So maybe they've always allowed this for free apps, which would be another reason why free to play. Or maybe things have changed. Maybe they even allow it for paid apps nowadays. I don't know what the story is.
I'm not sure, but it's also been a problem where people have purchased apps and they don't change the requirements, but they remove huge chunks of functionality on an update. And of course, there's no easy way to go back to a previous version of an app.
Yep.
So I mean, it's just a nest of problems.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. I would like you to
Yeah.
clarify some things from last week because I was, well, I was a little bit distracted last week, so I wasn't entirely
Yeah.
on the ball. But even just watching it again afterward, some examples were coming to mind of things that might or might not be considered a two-layer architecture, and that's what I'm curious to get your clarification
Yes.
on the types of things you're thinking about
Yep. Yep. And let
as
me.
distinguishing features of two-layer architecture,
Yeah.
as you mentioned last week. So is there any clarification you want to make right off the bat before I
Absolutely. Right.
ask about some of these examples?
Yeah. Right off the bat, let's talk about racing stuff.
Right.
Racing
So
games.
fuel.
That's a perfectly. This is a misunderstanding because
Okay.
when I was talking about race games, I was specifically talking about board game race games, like Cartagena,
Okay.
right? And the thing
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
saying is that particular kind of board gamey dynamic of a race game is virtually non-existent on computer game. I can't think of any single player computer game that I can load up and play right now that gives me a turn-based race game experience where I'm like moving some units on a hex grid or a square grid or something like that. And my goal is not to kill things. It's to get to the end of a path faster, or something's evading, something's chasing me, I'm evading, I'm hiding. I would love to play a game like that. Right. So that's a big clarification.
Okay.
So one of the things, yes. So I agree with you that the two-tiered structure all by itself is much more widespread. In fact, I almost go, like a large percentage of all the games I really like employ something like that. So most race games employ something like that, like Fuel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like that structure. Yeah, I mean the individual races are like what I'm calling the core game.
Right.
And then you do those, and those don't last long, and then there's a higher level. But okay, so do you have more clarifying questions about? I mean, I have more. There's more to talk about there, I think.
There is more to talk about there. I mean, I just was curious about some. So we mentioned Oasis, and we mentioned that the second tier in that game is very light.
Yeah, I think it's also very light in most of the race games that I've played. Right, and you also, so Candy Crush was another question, right?
That was what I was just going to bring up. Yeah.
Yep. Does Candy Crush count as the structure? Right. So maybe you can help me hash that out, because I'm not entirely sure about my own idea here, I think.
Okay.
And it's probably all on a spectrum of some kind. That's the easy way out. I'll just say that. I'll just hand wave that right away. Let me say, okay, so totally orthogonal to this, I'm specifically interested in the board gaming stuff, strategy games, what I would call strategy games, probably either turn-based or stop action, which is what I would call FTL stop action or something, which is pretty unusual game style. And that's just a matter of taste. I just think that it's an underrepresented genre. Plenty of race. I don't need to design a race game, like a physical racing game. Tons of those.
Right.
And then, okay, but then the two-tiered structure. Let me say what I'm particularly interested in is a structure where there's interplay going. There's strong interplay between the two levels that goes both directions. And specifically, what that would mean is that there are things you do, there are decisions you make in the core game that you make specifically because of things going on in the overgame, like like decisions that you would not make at all if you were simply playing that core game as a standalone instance of that core game. So now what you can do is help me figure out if this holds water, if that's actually an interesting distinction, or um, for instance, I was thinking about fuel today, and it's extremely light, but I think it has a tiny bit of this element, because so there's in this game, this race game, fuel. Fuel is money, right? That's all fuel really is. It's you buy stuff in the overgame. You just buy new vehicles with fuel.
Right.
And you gain fuel by going and winning races and challenges, and you also can collect fuel. It's just scattered out on the map. There are barrels full of fuel that you just run over with your car and you get more fuel, right? And so there is actually a little effect that happens in the middle of a tense race. Occasionally, there will be barrels of fuel right in the middle of the racetrack, or no, more interestingly, off to the side, right?
Right.
And so I suddenly have to make a split-second expected value decision of, is it worth risking me coming in first in this race by swerving over there to grab that fuel that would, and the ultimate goal is just to gain more fuel as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and that leads into like my own personal time. That's just like, I mean, you can't really, you can always just play more and more and gain more and more fuel, but I'm trying to do it, relatively efficiently. So I think that counts, right? Like, it's split second, it's totally an action game, so, it's action gamey kind of decision making, but I think it counts. I'm deciding how worth it is for me to swerve over there and risk losing this race. I think Oasis is about that level as well. I think you do make risk you do sometimes risk losing a map to gain extra water that will help you in upcoming levels. So does this work?
Well, I think so. So
yeah.
Then if we compare with Candy Crush, which actually I don't know if I can compare with Candy Crush, but I did play, because it was too long ago that I played any of it.
Yeah.
But I did play the farm one, whatever the farm one is from King.
Right. Farm.
It's the same thing.
Farm something Saga.
Farm story Saga.
Yeah, maybe
quest.
that. Yep.
Whatever.
Yep.
And in that, so yeah, the second tier of the structure, the overgame, is just basically a level list. Okay.
Yep.
So I don't know that you make, but you do have resources that you carry over from one level to the next and all future levels.
Right. So there's a decision, like they're usable, like there would be a decision there of like, oh, I can use this thing right now in this level, but maybe I don't have to, so maybe I can save it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And
I think
to me, I don't know. I wouldn't count that. There's nothing going on in that second layer that you would use those resources for, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, I think that's right. That there's nothing in the second layer. I don't know. I mean, see, I don't know how important it is to really nail this down. Like, if it does count technically as the structure I'm talking about, it's extremely light. It's obviously it's way lighter than I would want to design. It's that I would want to focus on. So I think it's an interesting technical question. But maybe we don't need to resolve it today or something.
No. So there are a class of games that use a puzzle structure for their core, and it's almost all that you're doing is for the second tier. So resource collection. You're basically the puzzle is you're collecting resources, and then that gets used to build buildings or whatever in your overgame. And I can't remember the name of one off.
So that
there are several.
Right. So that would be one where the lines go pretty much all in one direction. Like I can think of probably maybe we've already talked about examples where the lines essentially only go one way, right? Like so in this case, every core instance is like yeah, there's nothing in the overgame that's affecting how these core instances work, right? Is that true, is in this?
No, that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, in that
No.
case, then it
So
probably
that's
goes both directions.
yeah.
It's like it because if
It
anything you
probably does. Yeah.
yeah, if anything that you
The
like,
one
for
I'm
instance,
thinking of anyway. Yeah,
go ahead.
you build these buildings, and then those buildings give you, they add to your capability
Yeah,
in the core game,
if that's
and so
true, then
you're collecting.
I would
Yeah.
say that
In the
it's
example I'm thinking of.
okay. Then it's bi-directional, um, which is that. So that's what I like. That's what I'm most interested in, I would say. Um, but I can imagine we could probably come up with examples of both. Right? I mean, we could hypothetically imagine that same game where nothing you do in the overgame affects your abilities down in that puzzle game. So it's all one way. You're just down there collecting, trying to do as well as you can, collecting
Right.
resources, and then that affects you use those up in the overgame And then the other way around, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of games that are pretty light. Even I was thinking about even FTL is relatively light. I mean, the core game is, um, I mean, definitely all the stuff you do in the overgame really affects the core game because you're like buying new weapons for your ship and stuff like that. But for the most part, the core game, there's not a whole lot of effect. Like you're very rarely saying, making a decision that's like a trade-off in what. But there still are some. Like the biggest one I can think of is that you can actually flee from the battle after your engines power up. You can decide to just bail out of the battle, and if you do that, you don't get any of the reward. It saves your life, and so you're making that. Generally, you don't want to bail out, but at some point you're like, oh, I'm gonna die. So you're constantly. It's a game of chicken there, and so I think it has. I just feel like most of the games that I really like have it going in both ways.
Yeah, the earliest example that I can think of that has a unidirectional but two-layer structure is the old Electronic Arts chess game, Battle
Like,
Chess, I think.
oh, okay.
No, before
And then
Battle Chess, Archon.
Archon is the one that
Hey,
I was just gonna. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Ha,
So I mean, you
refresh
have
my
no
memory.
reason to. Archon, yeah, Archon
Just
is
about the two-layer. Of course, I definitely remember the gameplay of Archon, but I don't remember any second level.
well, you've got
Or
Archon is
the second level is
it's
the actual
basically
battles. Right. There's these
the
actual.
actual action battles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. There's an arcadey battle sequence, and then yeah. Yeah.
But that's unidirectional. There's nothing you would do. You would never have a reason to lose a battle, or you would never change your
Right.
behavior during a battle
Yep.
based on the going on in the actual
Correct.
on the board.
Yeah.
So,
So that's
but
yep.
but it's interesting that they identified this type of structure so long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Right. So there's other. Um, yeah. And so part of my question is. Well, I mean, you kind of have answered it. I mean, part of my question is why hasn't it been explored more? But really, it has been explored in all sorts of genres. It has, but not as much in the strategy game realm, I guess.
Right. So part of what I wanted to ask you was last week we mentioned several examples, like Geomancer, for example.
Yeah,
That maybe that was one you hadn't played, but it didn't
I
really
haven't played
grab
it.
me.
Yeah, I haven't played that one.
You did play it. I have not.
Have not.
I have not. So, but you can think of some other examples that you've played that fit this architecture part of your point was that some of these core activities will become more interesting to you when placed into that structure. And yet, my guess is still a lot of these games fail for you.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But maybe what you're saying all you're saying is that it would fail worse if all it was the core game.
That yeah.
Is that part
Yeah,
of your point?
I'm suggesting that in the computer game context, almost any of these core games, like basically solitaire, board gamey solitaire games like Bejeweled, I'm probably almost always going to like it more if it's embedded in, if it has that second level. Like I think that includes stuff like Drop 7, which I do really like as a core mechanism. But yeah, I mean I know this for sure already about Take It Easy, which is a board game. I love it. But I don't have any real strong drive to play it as a solitaire computer game. I've got it on my iPad and I can play it anytime. So yeah, I mean even stuff like, I mean it's been forever since I pulled out Drop 7. Threes didn't grab me. Threes is another. It's like so. But yeah, so I think one of the questions you're asking is what kinds of what kinds of core games would be best. I mean, because yeah, if we imagine putting that second layer on all sorts of different of these core mechanisms, I'm gonna like some of those games more than others, right?
Right.
And so, what turns that?
And so the first question there is, do you feel like you would have a strong preference for if the core was an action game or if the core was a strategy game? Because you are using like board game examples, I'm thinking you're probably looking more for strategy.
I am. Well,
as the core.
That's definitely my interest as a designer, because it's something I feel like I am capable of designing and capable of implementing. Because, like I said, I love action racing games, and I probably could come up with. I haven't even thought about it because I feel like it's out of reach. I don't want to develop a game like that. That's my point. My basic point is, it's a giant undertaking where you need, it's a big AAA experience.
Yeah.
You need 3D engine and all this crazy stuff. Yeah. But I probably could, like I said, this two-tiered structure is almost non-existent in the game. Like Fuel, like that little thing I mentioned about Fuel. So I played Forza Horizon recently. Loved it as a racing game. It's an open world. By the way, we talked about, you were kind of smiling at like why am I liking these racing games?
Right.
Almost all the ones that I've been playing are open world to some extent, right? Because I liked that element of Fuel. So I've been exploring like what other stuff people are doing with that. But also, to me, it's all about flow. These games they're flow experiences for me. They're physical. They're very arcadey physical experiences, and I really like the feeling of flow. I really like getting somewhat good at them. I'm no expert, but yeah, they're very flow-like experiences for me. So I love that. But I also like exploration, which all of these, like, so Forza Horizon, it has a free roaming feature, and you go around and you try to smash all the billboards. So Burnout Paradise is another game that had that very same thing. There's including the thing that we like, in Burnout Paradise, you're driving around a city and there's billboards everywhere and they're hard to get to. It's like you're driving right by it, there it is, but it's way up in the air, and so you have to go find the parking garage that you can drive up to the top of and ramp off all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I get some of that in in the various GTA titles,
yeah.
uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
GTA 3.
Which are
So
which are sort of driving games, right?
sure, sure. I
Well,
mean,
one of the ones I
auto is right in the title.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually, one of those other one of the many games that I played recently was a Rockstar game called it's a what is it? A Midnight Club. It's sitting right there. Midnight Club Los
Okay.
Angeles, which is another. It's an open world. It's a city based. It's a mock up of LA. You drive around, and so it clearly is using similar game engine to their GTA. It's better actually, the driving engine, I think, than GTA 4. I don't know. I don't know. But this is sidetrack stuff. What I was gonna
Sure.
say is, um, I can imagine a more interesting overgame structure to any of these games, right? Like none of them have a very interesting structure. I mean, most of them I don't even know if they count as the structure of mine. Where like in Fuel was the only one that comes to mind where I make any decisions during a race that have anything to do with the overgame. It's like no, during a race, it's a strict. It's like you're in a race, and yeah, it's all within race decisions. Um, I would love a game where it, it, I keep using the word, and people are gonna hate the way I use the term roguelike, right? I use it in this really loose sense,
So
right?
why don't you explain what you mean when you say
Yeah.
roguelike? What
Um,
attributes does that entail?
Irrevocable decisions. You can say permadeath, but that's too narrow for what I really mean, which is just decisions that that you can't take back, that have some effect on And I guess I mean that there's a there's a beginning and an end. Like it's a structure that you play over and over again, and it has some algorithmic content. So like Puzzle Quest
Okay.
wouldn't count. Puzzle Quest doesn't count. Like
Right.
technically, there are irrevocable decisions. Like when you lose a battle in Puzzle Quest, it doesn't make you reload to some previous state, right? You don't actually lose any progress. You lose your real time that you spent on that battle. Um,
Correct.
right. So so that wouldn't count as some people are calling this roguelike like FTL is a roguelike like. Because for a lot of people, roguelike means dungeon crawl, and you're on a grid, and whatever. Um, but anyway, I can imagine a racing game where the entire thing lasts for a couple hours. Like you start and you have a really weak car, and it algorithmically generates race tracks, right? Like or it uses the fuel map, which is huge. It would feel like algorithmic. I mean, they algorithmically generated that huge map anyway, to some extent. Um, right, but where and so you start doing these, and there's a whole like RPG like system of upgrading your car or buying new cars. And yeah, and now there probably would be decisions within the race that would affect, you'd be making risk analysis decisions of, oh, do I want to swerve over and grab that power up thing that'll let me buy something more, and that like in the
Hmm.
overgame, there will be some kind of a timer that's set, so now you really care this particular race, you want to earn as much money as you can because because you're running out of clock, not necessarily real time, but number of turns or something. Um, so like FTL, it's hard because you haven't played FTL, but you kind of know what it's all about. So like a version
Kind
of
of.
FTL where the core game is actually a race game, I would totally love that. Yeah, like a physical race game. Um, but no, nobody's doing that. I don't think. I don't think this game exists. Right. So we're totally nesting questions here. Um, yeah, but so I may as well say like so the thing I think I could design and implement, because FTL was designed and implemented by essentially two people. Sound was done by a third person. You know, that's the
Okay.
kind of the scope of a project that I think I could actually work on. You know, and yeah, you were asking in notes about what is the experience I get from board games that I'm trying to get in these. And
Well, yeah, okay. Go
yeah,
ahead with that.
I think that really it's really just something more general. It's like I really just meant like mechanically. There's an experience I get from board game race games like Cartagena and Daytona 500 and stuff like that. Like that, none of these computer games give me because they're all match three. They all keep giving me the match three experience. You know, like so, so I was going to propose just as another hypothetical, just to understand more of what I'm envisioning, like. Um, a game like Puzzle Quest. Like so, a lot of these games have maps with nodes, right? There's paths between the nodes, and so you walk, you know, you travel to a new node, and then the core game happens at that node, right?
Right.
What
Right.
and where? So I was envisioning an alternate style of game where the core game happens along the paths. So you're at a node and you see some surrounding nodes, and maybe they entice you, like, oh, here's a new weapon pickup, and here's a new thing here, and then you decide which one to travel to, and then the core game kicks in, which is a race game like Cartagena, like a turn-based race game. So maybe you have your party of 4 people, and your goal is to get to the end of that path without dying, and you're evading, and maybe there's something chasing you, and you're doing maybe the equivalent of drafting. That's what, you know, something that happens in these board game race games or something like that. And there's stuff on the map that you can pick up if it's worth it. You know, you're making that same kind of fuel decision, right? And then when you get to if you survive, this is all in what I'm calling a roguelike structure. If you survive to the end of the path, then you're at the next node where you can buy. That's like a store. You know, now you're in the over game, where now you can buy the stuff that's there depending on how well you did. Blah blah blah. Why doesn't this game exist? You know, it's because everybody does match three all the time. You know, it's because it's a bigger leap from, you know, but it's not that big a leap. I mean, we could do this. You know.
Sure, sure. So why haven't you done it yet?
Yeah,
Complain
you
about
know,
everybody else not doing it. Come on.
yeah. I just figure it's easier to complain. If I complain enough, somebody
Complain
else
about it. Yeah,
is going to
absolutely.
do it, right?
Yeah. Well, you keep hoping that. But that does bring up something else
Uh,
that. So last week you were talking about board games and video games, and there were some things that and that's part of what you were just talking about, some experiences that you get in board games that you don't get
yeah,
in video games, and vice versa, I think.
yeah,
And we had also talked about Diver Down,
yeah.
uh, and and I thinking about it
Right.
later because I had considered, making an electronic version of Diver Down. And it reminded me that there's this weird reason not to make Diver Down as an electronic game.
Right.
That is the main experience in Diver Down as a board game is to fake this way for you to find things that don't actually exist.
Right. Right.
And in an electronic game, that makes no sense. I mean, kind of the reason the
Yeah.
system is the way it is because it's not an electronic game.
I understand. Right. Right. So, like in a computer game, you would just plant those
Yeah,
wrecks or those
you
treasures.
get
You would just plant them out on the map. Yep.
you get Minesweeper with distance markers instead of just right next to you, just adjacency markers.
Yep.
So it's not that it couldn't be done. It's just that when I started thinking about that before, I thought it kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, the central mechanic, which is kind of interesting, but the central mechanic only really makes sense in a non-electronic format. And so then I was thinking about some other things like that, and Zendo maybe as an example.
Mm,
You can make electronic versions of Zendo, but they're going to be quite different from that physical version of Zendo. You can use the
yeah,
same core concept,
yeah,
and I know you've thought about this before.
sure. Yeah, I still think about it. Um,
But
yeah, yeah. I mean,
right,
Zendo's
so you would not like make a direct port of
never,
Zendo as an electronic
never.
multiplayer game. It like doesn't make sense, right? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think it does.
it's too physical in nature,
Yeah,
and or maybe that's the way. And so yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about. And there may be other board game experiences that are like that also.
sure.
I don't know. Can you think of any off the top of your head? Those I think are interesting.
Yeah, Jenga.
Yes, okay. In
Yeah,
fact, a lot of dexterity games. I've
sure.
tried like some Crokinole games and stuff, or there's billiards. There's electronic billiards and stuff.
Yeah, actually, somebody, on Twitter, I think it was on Twitter, somebody said, one of our many viewers chimed in and said, we want James to make his dungeon flicking game on tablets, on
Really?
yeah, yeah. And they said, so there is a Crokinole, no, there is a Pitchcar like game on iOS. It's like a race game with disc flicking race game, and people have
Okay.
seemed to get a kick out of it. I think I've played a few rounds of it years ago.
Yeah, they make some sense. To me, I guess
Yeah,
the dexterity games like that remind me of like the miniature golf games, electronic versions of miniature
yeah,
golf. Some of those are fun.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, to me, it feels. I have this thing about shoehorning. Like I kind of feel, it feels like shoehorning to me, and I know I don't know exactly how to define when it feels like that and when it doesn't to me, but it's like, yeah, I don't. I feel like if there are things that they just don't work. They work well as a board game. I mean, I kind of feel, but part of the point of all this stuff is that I feel even I feel like Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne on the tablet is shoehorning. Like, it's and they've had some financial success, so I'm not going to say that it's just pointless to do that. But I have never been interested in that. People have
right.
said, "Oh, what
Neither have I.
how about blockers? Why don't you do a iPad version of blockers?" No interest. I'm not interested in these dealing with matchmaking and setting up opponents. And to me, these games lose something. Turn-based multiplayer board games lose something.
Yes. Now, blockers, I think, would be a better match than some of the other than
Yeah,
Carcassonne, for example.
yeah, sure. It's
Um,
contained
yep,
in a
contained,
space.
and even
It,
if you didn't, it would actually be maybe a fun exercise to write some AI opponents for it.
sure. Yeah, I do. I enjoy that. I've done that in the
But
past
I
for
understand.
board
Yeah.
games. Yeah,
Yep. I've
yeah,
done some AI players too, but
yeah,
to me, it makes me wonder why. Why would I do that when
yeah,
okay, so this sort of gets at fitting the mechanics, well, not just the mechanics, fitting everything about a design to its format or to its platform,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
so, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but just to go the other direction really quick, I thought about this as well. Bejeweled could have been played hundreds of years ago. You can play that with a bag of stones and a checkerboard, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
do you know there actually is a Bejeweled board game?
yes, actually, I wondered for years. I was surprised that it took that long for it to happen. Um, I don't know how it plays though. Like, is it? I mean, do you actually run
Oh, I
gravity
don't
of any
know.
kind, or you don't know? I mean, that's the really cumbersome thing,
I
right?
don't know that. Yeah, yeah.
But you could totally do it.
Yeah.
I'm losing you.
You can, but yeah, it would make more sense with no match 3 game. Uh
Right. Yeah, I'm losing you, I think.
oh. Do you want to reconnect or sit it out, or I mean, just wait it out?
Yeah, maybe wait it out. I think I got you back
Okay.
now.
Okay. Everything seems
You want to
okay on
try
this side.
lowering? Okay, let's try that.
I'm not losing.
You're not losing me at all? Yeah, I'm losing you quite a bit.
Here. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, experiencing difficulties. Check your connectivity. Oh,
That's
tink tink. What does that mean?
it's saying that to you?
It just did now. Yeah, just now. You want me to try setting mine down a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I turned mine down to the middle setting.
Okay, I just turned myself down here. Let's try that.
Sure. Wow,
Whoa,
very
you look
yeah, very
impressionist.
low is pretty insane. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. You look like in a Scanner Darkly
Yeah,
or whatever that.
yeah.
Is that right? Anyway, or what was that other movie that was all rotoscoped?
There are a few of
Where
them.
they just interviewed. Well, the one where they just interviewed a bunch of like thinkers, philosophers,
Well,
and
there's
stuff.
Waking
That was good.
Life.
Waking Life. I think that's what I'm
Is that the
thinking of.
one?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I thought of it because I think it's the same director
It is.
as Scanner Darkly. Yeah,
It
that's
is.
why I was
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Anyway,
interesting
where
stuff.
were we before
Um,
our technical difficulty?
we were,
I was talking about format, fitting your design to your format.
yeah, and we were talking. So this problem goes both ways, right? Like a lot of board games, I feel like they lose something, and then even games that are as simple as Bejeweled definitely lose something if you try to make them physical, like a bag of stones and a checkerboard. So so
And they've done some crazy things, like they made there's a Halo miniatures game, like board game, and there's even a what's the one with the cogs? Wow, my memory's awful. I played the hell out of this game, all 3 versions. Yeah, the cogs,
uh,
with the Marcus and
Gears of War,
whatever. Yes, Gears of War. Thank you.
they made
So
it.
Gears of War,
Um,
there's a board game, Gears of War board game,
right. I mean that's
and I guess more generally there was Frag. Yeah, is another one.
yeah. I mean I kind of don't even count that stuff though. I mean Bejeweled, I'm saying.
Right.
I mean
They
you
just
can.
made a miniatures game and
It's
branded it
it's
that way. Yeah.
branded. It's branded. Whereas Bejeweled, you literally can duplicate those mechanics, those game mechanics, in physical space, but it's just very cumbersome, right? It's going to feel flat.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah. So, but you were saying something about all of that, though.
I don't know what I was saying.
Oh,
I notice it. I can say
right.
that I notice it. So Carcassonne is one example where I'm just like, this doesn't really
Yeah.
work. But one of one of my pet peeves is when I'm playing a game on a mobile device, like on an iPhone or an iPad, and it's got a fucking virtual thumbstick.
Oh, yeah. Nah.
Ah,
Yeah.
it's
That's
like
no good.
that is you're not fitting your design
No.
to your platform.
No, yeah, that's a quintessential example of shoehorning, what I'm calling shoehorning. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean that's all about I think that's all about people trying to take existing product. It's people trying, it's like I think that stuff will eventually go away. It's people trying to fit their existing products onto this new platform, or just trying to fit their existing design ideas onto this new platform, because it's harder to come up with new design ideas, that fit the, and just so much of it is about people trying to make money in one way or another, trying to support a business, and I think,
I don't know. It probably, but I can't fault anybody for that.
No, I can't either. Exactly. It's just
Yeah.
In the long run, it's counterproductive, I think. Like, I don't know how many people have made big money with virtual thumbstick games. I mean, maybe there have been a few, but
That's a good question, but it wouldn't surprise me that much.
If they have made some big money?
Yeah, because people play a lot of what I would consider substandard games.
Yeah, sure. Well, because these are games that, some of them are going to they're branded, so there's that appeal, and and even the players are in the old mode. Players don't want to change either necessarily. They're used to thumbsticks. Certain hardcore segments. But yeah, I just think it's a short-term phenomenon.
We're complaining.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's go back to the topic of what I'm interested in, the topic of what kinds of core mechanisms are interesting for this two-tiered structure. What qualities does a puzzle game, or not necessarily a puzzle game, a turn-based, solitary kind of board game, what qualities should that thing have? Like, I've been saying it can be very wide. Like, I'm saying, like, Cartagena, something like that would work, or Lost Cities, or Take It Easy, or, Diver Down. I'm starting to see the potential issues there. That's the thing. That's a good, like, I hadn't thought that through. So and that makes me wonder if maybe there are other problems that I'm not seeing yet. I keep asking, why aren't people doing this? Maybe there are better reasons than I think, But
So what qualities? Well, I think you hit on an important issue there, with kind of information being bidirectional between the two layers, between the two tiers. So, I mean, in very, very general terms, you need a core game that has some kind of output, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is maybe it's more interesting if the output is not strictly a byproduct of that core game.
Right. Like, I find it interesting when you have to make trade-offs, where it's like, here's a thing you can do. Like in Puzzle Quest, it might just be matching gold or matching the experience gems.
Right. So actually, that's only in Puzzle Quest 1. In Puzzle Quest 2, that is not the case.
Okay.
They took the gold and they took the experience off the puzzle board.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, I keep citing that just as an example. I don't know that I love that mechanism exactly in Puzzle Quest, in the first Puzzle Quest. Like, I don't know how strong it is. Like, I don't know how often in Puzzle Quest I was saying, should I make this green gem match that'll help me in this current battle, or should I make this gold match? I think I always felt like the gold was so minuscule, like the amount of gold I was getting, that it was never really an interesting trade-off.
Well, so I actually thought it was a problem in Puzzle Quest 1.
Okay.
Because you had the potential, when you're really whooping some ass, and you're in no danger of losing the fight anytime soon, to just milk that gold or experience, farm it. So I actually considered that kind of fixing a problem. They took that off the grid in Puzzle Quest.
Right. Yeah. So that comes down. It comes down to very specific game. Yeah, these are the kind of questions that we would be grappling with whatever core mechanism we come up with. These are interesting design problems. Because of course you could band-aid. I mean, I'm immediately thinking that it would feel like a band-aid, but you could put a time, like a turn timer on these battles, or you could do other things that would make it so you don't want to milk like that, or that you can't for some reason.
Right.
But that's my criticism of that system, the golden and experience system, is that it never really felt like much of a trade-off. I felt like the amount of experience you get for a gold match I felt like they were more there just as something to do when you didn't have anything else to do. Either you've either got it all locked up, or there weren't any, or it's just like the dynamics of match 3 of that particular match 3 system are that you need like 8 colors. You want to have like something like 8 colors, and they probably didn't want to have 8 colors for spells because it really washes everything out. They're just looking for something else to do with all these 8 colors, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So it's complicated though. These are interesting design.
Well, so I'm
questions.
interested once you finally play Puzzle Quest 2, I'm interested to hear your take on which one you like better.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you have the same reasons that I do for preferring Puzzle Quest 2, if that turns out to be the case.
And another thing I'll say there is just that I'm also not a fan of the overall structure of Puzzle Quest, which is not this roguelike structure that I'm talking about, because that's another thing that it's kind of like it doesn't. There's no real tension. Like, oh, do I choose to match gold or do I choose to match green? Because I know that if I just keep putting in my time, I'm going to get all the gold I want, and I'm going to get all the experience I want, and I'm going to keep winning battles. I'll lose some, but yeah, it's like that whole thing. I much prefer an experience that has a beginning and an end, and some real tension there.
Yeah, I add it myself, right? I didn't play Puzzle Quest with permadeath like I do in Skyrim, but yeah, I'm at that point.
Oh yeah, that's the thing you could do.
You could.
Yeah,
you just manufacture that tension yourself.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting question, because like Skyrim is probably a compelling enough game for you to be willing to start over. Like, yeah, I don't know, if I got like 3/4 of the way through Puzzle Quest 2 and I decided to play permadeath and then I die, am I really going to start? That might just be it for Puzzle Quest 2, know?
Because it's linear. It's not open world.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a big part of it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so we're jumping around here as always. We're jumping around here a lot. But so we were talking, now I'm jumping to like, what qualities does this overgame do I want this overgame to have? And you talked about how part of the problem part of the reason why there aren't more Puzzle Quest style games is that it's hard to develop all the content that they put into the overgame, right? And so
it's more work than what you maybe get out of that part of the game.
Right. And so what I would like to see is much more algorithmic overgames, right? Like maybe there are quests or stories or other things happening up there, but that it's a lot more algorithmic, so that. And I think that's better in general for indies. In general, I think it's way better to design algorithms than content.
For me, it's way more fun.
It's totally. I think it's more fun for me as a designer. It's more fun as a player to me.
Yeah, me too.
So that's a general statement.
I actually think, and I think that actually can help keep you motivated.
Yeah.
While you're developing it, right? When I You
Yeah.
remember when I created word surgeon, I didn't actually go through and find all of those, right? Or I didn't create all the word puzzles. I
Yeah.
used a dictionary,
Of
and then
course.
I wrote code to actually find them. So I got to play the whole game,
That's it.
all
Yep.
1,000 of those puzzles, which
Yep.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Same with. I mean, I got to play all the
Yeah, so same with
Blockhouse.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, all the block you tweak those in a level editor though, right?
Almost never. Like
Oh, really?
almost never did I do manual tweaks to an individual puzzle. It was almost all selection of puzzles that had
So
evolved.
you just played
The-
whatever 500 puzzles and
Yeah.
chose
The
your favorite 100?
the algorithm kind of tweaked puzzles on occasion, but yeah, I almost never did because almost any tweak to those puzzles changed it into an entirely different puzzle. Like it was like, okay, I could add a wall block here, and then the whole grid, the whole puzzle graph just changed completely. So uh, yeah, it was
But
mostly.
some of them, that's awesome. That's awesome. Some of them were constructed though, right? Like the Pac-Man level.
Yeah, the very few Pac-Man level and
Like one or two
the,
others, right?
there's a Space Invaders level and a Pac-Man level.
Yeah, those are cute.
I think that's about it. Yeah, that was just a silly little thing to do. Even then, I can't remember. I might have evolved. No, I mean the Pac-Man maze is just exactly the maze. So yeah, that one was just, and then I just put two blocks in it and looked at the puzzle graph and just found a good beginning and end state. Space Invaders one has a couple of little jogs, a couple of little blocks in key places that turn it into a little maze. Because without those, it wasn't an interesting level at all.
Right.
I can't even remember now if I stuck those in by hand. Probably I did. That it was easy enough to just start sticking a couple in by hand and looking at the puzzle graph and saying, oh, this one has a lot of states. This one has a pretty interesting path from here to there, and that's a puzzle. Almost all
Yeah.
the rest, yeah.
And so
And
did that help with motivation for keeping
absolutely,
you going?
I don't think I could have done that project without if it was just hand making those puzzles. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to even think about, like Fez, which we talked about earlier tonight. I loved Fez. I don't know. I feel like in the past maybe I could have tried to design something like Fez, but I'm so algorithmic and I've been doing board games for so long. I don't know that I could design something like Fez now because it's so hand constructed. Like, can you imagine all the hours that you'd play test? And you know everything. You know all the
Right.
puzzles. You know everything about these levels. The space. Yeah, there's nothing for you to discover as a designer there. I don't know how they did that. I don't think I could do that
Yeah.
anymore.
It's just just content perfection, just sort
Yeah,
of polish that
yeah,
whole process. The whole polish uh, uh, sort of phase is so disinteresting to
yeah.
me.
I know it's hard.
It's such a slog,
Yeah,
and it takes me so long because I'm not very good at it. I'm not interested in it. So, oh man.
but
So that's
in this context, you're talking about polish to like even if you have like an algorithmic, like word surgeon, like
yeah,
the everything else that has to happen, just like graphics and making whatever make.
yeah. And for so long, Word Surgeon sat in that state where I could play it,
Yeah,
but it's not presentable to anybody.
yeah,
Can it once it hits sort of that alpha stage, it's feature complete,
yeah.
and but it isn't pretty. I've got like Bandy is that way. I've got
Yeah, I keep meaning to
several,
ask about that. Yeah, Bandy is just sitting in
and
that.
yep,
Yeah,
it may always be.
yeah.
Well, that's got an interesting issue that we could talk about some other time.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah,
it's not design related exactly, but it has to do with the what Amazon allows and doesn't allow,
oh,
stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Kind of weird.
Well,
Anyway,
that'll be for our other show, Business Time with James.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Which is even less interesting to me than
that's
polish,
right.
I think.
Yep, yep. Right. How did we get there? We got there
Oh,
from
I have no idea.
we're talking about we're talking about the qualities that the core game and the over game, general stuff that we think they need to have or should that we would like them to have, and how they should
Yeah.
interact
So
with each other.
so here's a question. Here's a hypothetical.
Yeah.
So uh, in the last week, I've started just started doing some HTML canvas work,
Okay.
like learning it, because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So I just started with something very basic, and I thought maybe I can put together Bunny Kiss, which we talked about last time.
Yeah.
The sort of
Yeah.
two, the square grid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
So I think
that's a start on the RPG game, really, right?
well, that's my question.
You got to
That's my
start
question.
somewhere.
So what would make an interesting second layer for that? I mean, there's nothing
Yeah.
there. I don't know if there is any output. What's weird about a situation like that, about that type of puzzle, or say Blockhouse, right? When you
Right.
have a
Okay.
puzzle that's really just a puzzle, it's an actual puzzle.
Yeah.
You're just solving it.
Yep.
So I've seen some Blockhouse-ish games, not as good, of course, but some Blockhouse-ish games where you do have like stars on the
Uh, okay.
on the board somewhere, and you can collect the stars or not, right? So you can complete it. You can go from the beginning to
Yeah.
the finish state without collecting any of the stars, and or they'll have like 3 stars on there, so you can get from 1 to 3 stars that way. So that's a kind of output. That's something that can be added to a pure puzzle.
Right.
But
But
besides that, the only thing is how efficient you were, right? Did you waste any moves? There's a
right. And
theoretical
block. Yeah.
minimum number of moves, which usually to me is not interesting. I'm not that interested in finishing puzzles in the minimum number of moves.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think that Blockhouse is not a good fit at all for what I want. I think that and this okay. Little side note. I feel that to call Tetris and Bejeweled puzzle games is a misnomer. I don't think that's a great name for those. Blockhouse is a puzzle game.
Yeah,
Tetris and Bejeweled are just games, right? Like I think that you may as well call chess a puzzle game, you know. Uh, that's my take on it, Like chess is a
yeah,
puzzle game. Like if you could see the entire strategy tree of chess, it's deterministic. I mean, it's a big puzzle. Just that we can't see that tree, so we have to we have to use heuristics and yeah,
right.
which is what we do in Bejeweled and Tetris. But so maybe there's maybe
I
I'm
feel like
looking
there's
at
a
it I'm looking at it and probably from a very different angle. I think
I think
people
so.
would say, well, it's puzzle-y because in Tetris you're fitting puzzle-like pieces together. Right.
That's probably where that originated, that
Yeah.
term, right? It was
Yeah.
probably from sort of jigsaw puzzle-like, right?
Right.
Tetris is somewhat jigsaw-ish, and then I
Yeah.
think because other what are now called puzzle games sort of have a similar look, like Bejeweled. They're
Yeah.
played on a grid,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and they're generally one player. That's probably how that term got carried over to those. But I
Right.
agree that they're not puzzles. Uh, and so, does that mean that puzzles as a core mechanism in this two-tier structure is a bad fit?
I think they are. If we're defining puzzles as things like Blockhouse, yeah, I don't have any vision of how to make that work. Well, at the very least, I think. Well, I was going to say. I mean, at the very least, they would need to be puzzles that you could algorithmically generate on the fly, because otherwise, I don't know where you're going to get. I mean, if you want the roguelike structure that I want for the second tier, you need to be able to play that essentially forever. You need to be able to play as many instances of that game as you'd like.
Sure. Okay. So switch back to Bunny Kiss, which can be algorithmically
Sure. Okay.
generated.
Okay.
But it's probably not. Again, it's probably not a good fit for
I think right.
puzzle.
Because you're right. Because there's essentially there's a solution, right? Yeah, like you said, there's this value. You can talk about how many moves did it take you to get to that solution, which is a pretty weak. Yeah, that's not much to hang an overgame on. It's this value that you're spitting out there, like.
You could. I mean, you could finagle it in there, but yeah, I think it'd be shoehorning.
Yep. So yeah, I think. I think that's a pretty simple answer. To say no, like I wouldn't even spend much time thinking about how to make puzzle games work of that style to work better. I would just ignore. I would just say no, that's not the right route. So, but of course you can take that. But your actual idea right now for an RPG, it does have something like Bunny Kiss, right? But it's a more fluid, it's more Bejeweled-like, and there's not just a solution.
It's much more Bejeweled-like. Correct. There is no solution.
Right. It's a thing. You're using that kind of a mechanism to move pawns around on a board, but it's in a never-ending. It's like you're collecting resources by doing that, and.
Yeah. At this point, there are no pawns even.
Okay.
The game is actually looking for cascades of that type of move.
Okay. Yeah.
Chains of that type of move. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I think. Well, so yeah. I mean, that's a great. This is all. So you've hit on another equality. That like. Too puzzly is bad. However, we want to put that. It's like things where there's just basically one solution, which you could get to more or less efficiently. That doesn't seem like a very good fit. Yeah, I think.
Well, so here's something that could be interesting, maybe. What if you had an actual puzzle that has, say, 3 solutions? One that's pretty easy. So you could imagine. So say you did take Blockhouse, just because it's easy to imagine this. Say you got 3 finishing spots on each of the boards.
Yep.
One's pretty easy to get to. Another one's so-so, and the third one is the hardest one to get to.
Sure.
Right? Hardest by whatever measure you want to use. Then you have that decision, right?
Yeah.
And so if you finish on the easiest one, you get whatever resource you get. You get a rusty helmet. You finish the middle one. Middle one you get a Maserati, and if you finish the third one, you get a blowjob, right?
Yep.
So that maybe is a way to So a puzzle with multiple solutions maybe could be interesting.
Yeah. Right. So there you still have to like thinking about all the different things I want. That's still a unidirectional, like what in the overgame is affecting your performance down there in that puzzle, right? If it's nothing, then we're missing one of the things I'm interested in. It's you don't have much room to maneuver. It's with a really abstract puzzle system down there. You just I mean, I do like the hypothetical design challenge of thinking about that, and it could lead somewhere interesting, but I don't know, it seems like limiting.
I agree. It's just a possible way to make it interesting. I think it's probably not. I don't know why you would go that way as opposed to something more gamey for your core.
Right. I mean, the gamey stuff. Again, it's like if you can't algorithmically generate like you said, you can algorithmically generate. Well, so now you'd have to have an algorithm that generates these 3 different star levels and is able to sort of figure out which one is the hardest, right? It's like that's starting to get more complex. But But I definitely don't want to be like hand designing
No, 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 no,
a
no.
bunch of puzzles. You know, it's like yeah, it's yeah. So yeah, I think something more gamey is better. Um, you know probably. And well, you know, an interesting question for me because I've always been a bit on the end, probably to a fault, on the end of like liking simplicity and elegance and things like
You have
that.
a fault?
Uh, I said probably. I'm trying. You know,
Okay.
I'm making an effort.
Oh, I'm sorry, my emphasis was not correct. You have a fault?
Ah,
English is a tricky language.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I have no. The I Where was I now? What
Oh, damn it.
I have an asphalt. Um
You have an asphalt.
uh
And by the way, just to point out, because your viewers probably caught this while you did not, that in my puzzle three exit puzzle example, I positioned blowjob as more valuable than the Maserati. Just to point that out.
yeah, I mean
You
it
just
I
flew
just
right past it.
no, I mean I just accepted it was as an obvious.
Oh, it's obvious. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
exactly. Maserati's probably number on the lowest level
The
for
lowest.
me. Yeah.
You take the rusty helmet over the Maserati.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, sure, man.
Uh, I could afford the rusty to keep up the rusty helmet.
Let's see.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so
I
basically, it's done, right? We
The
know how
whole
to
thing.
we know how to design this thing.
I guess so. Yeah, we need two levels. The core game needs to be kind of gamey.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we were talking about, simplicity and elegance versus, I like to think I can find a balance there that I like. But I do want it like that, that race game idea I was talking about, the board gamey race one. Like that sounds fun. That seems like that could have a nice medium level, because there could be things on this path that you have to go out of your way to go pick up, and that's a risk every time you do that. It's like you're risking. But ideally there would be lots of variety in there, lots of shapes of paths, lots of different enemies that are chasing you, and they all behave right. They have different movement patterns, and
Yep.
it's all that rich core game juiciness, and then and then you've got some the over game stuff will probably have things that you can buy. Maybe that's a thing to think about. Like, does it always have to be about money? I mean, it probably
No,
does.
that's one of my design goals in my puzzle RPG I'm making. That one of my notes is, can I do without a store with a question
Yeah.
mark?
Yep. That's a great
I would
question.
really like to try it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, even in that little suggestion, you know, it's like if there is no store, but these things are just dotted along the maps that it's like, so what you're spending is risk. I mean, you're risking essentially is like, it's like, oh yeah, there's a really juicy item over here that I would love to go pick up, but I could very likely die and lose this whole game if I go try and do that, And,
Right. Okay. So, did you ever try that iOS game called Avoid the Monsters? I
yeah,
think it's called.
yeah, I did. I tried it.
And what did you make of that? So that's kind of only, it's got the sort of path type thing, this risk assessment. Do I go this way, this way? It looks like I may get, the crap kicked out of me going this way and stuff. I don't remember it having any like second layer or first layer really. It's sort of
Yeah,
like the second layer you're talking about or the top layer you're talking about without having the core game in it.
yeah. I mean, it was.
Did it do anything for you? It was kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
it did something for me. I found it tedious. Um, so there was something. Yeah, I mean, it it definitely had connections to some ideas that I had talked about with you about like these adventure gamey things. It sort of proved why those might not be so great. Yep, I totally caught all of that. But I actually felt like there was still more there to explore. I didn't give it much of a chance, actually. You told me about it when I was on some trip, and so I only had my phone with me. Like I never even it was really tedious on the phone. The screen size was.
Oh, yeah, I bet it was.
And I never got around to even loading it up on the iPad, so that would have helped right there. But in general, I didn't. It's like it had a surface feeling like this was a game, but it really was a puzzle, right? Like I didn't feel like I was really making any decisions. I was just trying to find the right path through this maze, this tree-like maze. And
yeah, but it was kind of soft. The information you had was kind of soft.
Yeah.
That you're making those, which I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it was an interesting exercise, but I don't. Right?
That's what I thought too. And I think I only got through like one or two. I mean, I would like to solve a few more of those puzzles, just to make sure I understood the feeling that you get from that, or how much harder or whatever. I don't know. But in general, too puzzly for what like as a core mechanism for a thing like what we're talking about.
Yeah, for me it was basically just too dry.
Dry, yeah, it was dry.
But I think people should check it out because it is of some interest.
Yeah. Okay. So now let me. Oh boy, yeah. So we're coming up on the hour-and-a-half mark. How many notes? Well, let me just ask this general question. A difference between you and I a little bit. So I think we both I like findy stuff. I like the finding element of Bejeweled. I think you like it more than I do. Like our weightings are different.
Yeah, I would say probably.
Yeah, so
I would say finding is maybe my favorite thing to do in games.
Okay.
Finding.
Yeah.
And so, not just in game. In life also.
Okay. And I like it. I think maybe there are ways ways to make me like it even more. Like I would like to figure out how to bring that out of a game. I tend to, I guess, more often I like analysis and decision making. Like, would you buy that those are sort of orthogonal? Well, that like the process of finding a bunch of matches on a Bejeweled board, like that doesn't involve the same kind of decision making as like what you do after that, which is just deciding which one of those matches you actually want to make.
Right. It's finding by itself is not really that. It's not really a cerebral activity.
Exactly. Right.
You might spot something and then go through some sort of mental process.
Yep.
Of how to acquire it.
Yeah.
But the actual just sort of finding, and here's what I really like. And have not really seen a good example of. I would love to see something where the finding is kind of intuition based.
Right.
Okay, so I like physical finding, right? One of my favorite things in before Skyrim, Oblivion was finding those the magic plants, Nirnroot. Nirnroot makes a sound. Right?
That's not in Skyrim?
It is in Skyrim also, but it's kind of more of a thing in Oblivion. At least it was for me. And it makes a sound.
Yes.
So this is not exactly intuitive based, but it's another way of finding stuff. But I'll just be running along, right? I'm going somewhere, and I pass by. I just hear this faint little, as I'm passing by.
Yeah.
And I know what that is. and then you're kind of zeroing in on it, right? It's
Yeah.
not like it's not kind of a mental process.
Yep.
It's in that case, it's not exactly an intuitive process either, but it's, there's something there. There's
Yeah, I know. I know what you
I
mean.
would like more experiences like that where the
Yep.
finding is less of a puzzle and more of just the experience of
Yeah.
finding stuff. I don't know. I mean, at the other end, I don't want to just be walking, on a big flat area and there are
Yeah.
things
And
scattered
just
around.
stumbling on things, right?
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
quite.
Yeah. 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 I hadn't really thought about it in finding terms, but I mean, I almost wonder if paradigm has something to say there because I mean, it's puzzly, but it's also very intuitive, right? Like if there were things like that where it's like you were walking across a landscape and there were sort of there were patterns that you needed to figure out that would help you find things. You wouldn't necessarily be sure. We've talked about some of these kind of ideas before, right? Like you're walking through a landscape and you're sort of gathering clues that suggest, this thing that I'm looking for might be over to the west,
Yeah. So here's often what I consider to be really good level designers. If there's a level design involved in a game, I can kind of like intuit or guess where they've put, say, a treasure
Yeah,
chest or a power up or something like that. And I'm
yeah,
like, you know what? That spot right there looks like if I go around
yeah,
that corner, maybe that would be a good place for one. And then I go around the corner, and if it's there, I go, good level
yeah,
designer. And if it's not there,
yeah,
I go, fuck you. Why didn't you give me
yeah.
a
That's
thing
right.
for
That was
looking there?
wrong. Yeah,
Something like that, especially if that could be algorithmically generated,
I
right? So,
know.
like,
Wow.
if there were properties of things, like, for example, Nerdroot grows near water in
Yeah,
Oblivion and Skyrim, right?
yeah.
So if you
Okay.
actually want to go out and look for Nerdroot, you can go out to the water and go around follow the coast. I actually did that for hours.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and because it's not right on it might be behind a rock somewhere. So then you're following this coast and you're listening, stuff
Yeah.
like that is really compelling for me in kind of like
Interesting.
a hypnotic way.
Hmm. Yeah, yep, yep, yep. Do um how much of Red Dead Redemption hunting involves
Okay,
finding
so
activity?
I was going to mention I played some CRPG
Okay.
this week, meaning after we
Yeah.
talked about it last week. I loaded up Red Dead Redemption, I think 3 times this week. Went up to Tall Trees. That's the area that
Yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah,
imagine
yeah.
being like northern Canada. Got out my bolt action rifle,
Your bolt action.
and here's what I learned. I learned that in the CRPG, if you get off your stagecoach to help somebody, you will get killed by bears. That's what I learned.
What does the bolt action rifle not do enough against bears?
You even headshots, you still need, I think, at least 2. One I know does not do it, so you need
Yeah.
2, possibly 3 headshots on a bear with a bolt-action rifle. If you use the buffalo rifle, I think one headshot will put a bear down. But the problem
Okay.
is, I was helping somebody out and had 2 bears come up behind me. One bear
See,
is one thing. 2 bears? Come on. Anyway, okay,
yeah,
that's the CRPG. But what were you saying about Red Dead
yeah.
Redemption? Yeah, hunting. Yeah, I love hunting. So yeah, I was out
Is
hunting.
is finding so finding is a part of that experience, right?
Yeah, and what's really great about that is you go back and forth between these 2 styles of finding.
Mm,
Uh, so the plants, right? The various plants you can collect. You can see those out in there, and then when you get close enough, they appear on your map.
yeah,
So it's not just when they would be on your map. You have to actually be closer than that,
yeah,
maybe like
right.
half the distance between you and the edge of the mini map, right?
Yep.
And they'll appear. So similarly, when you shoot a bird out of the sky and it falls down over there, okay, way over there, you start walking toward it, and then at some point, the little X appears
Yep.
on your on
Yep.
your map. So going back and forth between, hey, I see it in the world, I either shoot it down or I want to walk over there and collect that plant, and especially if I'm shooting multiple things, right? If
Right.
I'm not just doing one and then go
It's
collect it,
now
shoot
you
one,
gotta
go collect
now you sort of got to remember where you think they
a little bit of memory
spot.
element,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that is findy for me, and it's very much like finding Nirnroot.
Yeah.
Um, you know where certain animals tend and what times of day they tend to be out, so that if you're hunting a particular type of animal, yeah, you know which areas you want to avoid. Oh,
Yeah.
goddamn cougars. Bears are bad, but you can hear their breath coming when they're behind you.
Oh, cougars are
They breathe
quiet.
heavy. Cougars are quiet, and they'll just fucking take you down from
Yeah.
nowhere. You think, where'd you come from? They're dangerous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, both of
So
those games have that, and those are games that I will. And I don't even know if that's a game. Is that even really
right.
a game?
Yeah, it's an activity.
Different discussion.
It's
It,
pastime.
it's, yeah, I think so. I
Well,
think
so
so.
that's the yeah. Okay, so part of my point was that it seems like for you and probably for me as well, um, it would be nice for a puzzle. See, now I'm less liking the name puzzle RPG at this point, but
Right.
whatever this game is, what these games are, you would like there to be findy elements to these things, right? Um,
Well, I don't know that I need that in every game,
okay.
but I do. I really, yes, that's one.
Yeah.
I guess the games that I really love
Yeah.
have a strong findy element in them.
Yeah.
Like, I like Match 3 partly because it's findy, and then Pond makes it even more findy, and I like
Yeah.
that even better. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
maybe.
And yeah, right. And I mean, Diver Down has this, right? Like
Yes,
just
yeah.
so yeah. So I'm interested. It's interesting. So for me, I definitely like structure. Like it goes back to this reason. Like I like the findy stuff, but I like Red Dead Redemption hunting or something like that. Like I would like to be doing that in a context where I can lose if I don't do this well enough. You know what I'm saying? Like I would be more compelled if it was like a 2 or 3 hour experience
Hmm.
where I was hunting and collecting that stuff, and then that was helping me whatever gain better rifles or
Sure, sure. So
and that
here's what I would like. Yeah,
yeah
with that, if you've got just the hunting part, and actually I love the sort of pop-up events that happen too. But even
yeah
if you just had the hunting part and you would sell your stuff at a store so that you can buy more ammo and get more guns, better guns and stuff like that. Uh, but you die and you're done. I mean, that's kind of
yeah
how I play now. When
right
I'm hunting this week, what
okay
I hunt until I get killed by bears or get killed by a
yeah
cougar,
okay
and then I turn it off. Not really in the same way as Skyrim,
yeah yeah yeah
I will actually start the game over, but just as a play session, I'm treating it
yeah
kind of that
okay
way. But yeah, if you had just had those elements, and then your score was whatever your total was when you
yeah
died,
yeah yeah yeah
your total cash you got, then you've got decisions. Well, do I really need a better gun because that's taking out of my
exactly
score? Yeah.
yeah and yeah so
Uh,
that maybe that kind of speaks to this the thing that where I definitely like finding elements. But I also really like what I'm calling analysis, decision making. It's all this, it's the stuff that you do in Bejeweled after you've found all the matches you're interested in finding anyway, and you're starting to look for threes and fours and cascades and setups and all that stuff. So there's a balance, I guess, for me between the two. Yeah, I think for you too as well.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and also I would like. One of the things I like about the race, the board game race game idea is it would be kind of nice to make a game that's not about fighting, and that's I know that sounds all moral. That sounds all
No, no,
moralistic
no, no.
and stuff.
Well,
But
even just for a difference, change of.
that's totally that's my main thing. There is variety. That's my overarching complaint about a lot of this stuff. But when it comes to strategy games in general on the computer, it's like just not enough variety. Not nearly as much as there is in the board game world, for my taste. Yeah. So yeah, how does your notes look there? I had some as well, but I don't
Did
know.
you?
You want to go?
Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff that's totally unrelated, so I
Okay.
should probably wait for other conversations.
It's gonna
So
light up my face here. Or we can wrap it up. There's.
I think why don't we? It's
I think we should. Yeah.
If you're ready,
Yeah.
that's good, and then we can
Yeah.
pick it back up against next week. I want to ask you, did you notice something changed somewhere in the middle of this video?
Is it?
So this is a quiz for everybody that's watching. Yeah, unless you hit it. What was it?
No, I don't think I have it. Are you? Am I talking to Tammy now? Did you change
No.
people?
Yes, I've gone through a transformation.
Yep.
I am now a woman. I'm a yes. No. Something obvious switched during the middle of this video. So
are you in the same room?
I'll leave it as an exercise. I am in the same room. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I got.
All right. We'll leave it as an exercise for the viewers.
All right. We need those. People coming back.
Viewers. Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a little puzzle in every episode.
In fact, your puzzle on the first 3 episodes is to figure out what the puzzle was in the first 3 episodes.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to need to do that as well.
Yes, we will. Well, but just because we provide a puzzle doesn't mean we provide a solution. It's
true.
That's not necessarily. Anyway.
All right, man. Great conversation as usual. And,
absolutely.
We'll do this again next week.
Let's do.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Design time. See you later.